Hey mate.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Very well. This is a bit different to Zoom, isn't it?
A little bit different. This
It's real. I didn't know
too many in-person ones nowadays, which is good.
No, this time round.
Initially we took inspiration from Stephen
Yeah.
and the Diary of a CEO and trying to do all of the episodes in person, but like that got a little bit, it was actually quite restricting. And the whole point of this podcast, the whole name is Unlimited, which is the opposite of restriction. Yeah. So like, and plus we can't get to as many people then either. In terms of like now we can talk to anyone, anywhere, but when we're together it's nice to do podcasts in person when we can. So the circumstances, why are we together?
Yeah, why is today so special?
Why are we here? What is this? We're actually in an Airbnb in the city. It feels, when I speak it out loud, it feels really weird, but like we're on floor 47 in a high rise and we're looking out at the city. It's fucking weird up here, man.
Let's do some numerology. What's 4 plus 7? 4.
New beginnings. So yeah, new beginnings. Tomorrow, on the 1st of December, I fly to Bali for 4 months. And then I'm going back to Ireland for 2 months. So I'm testing out this whole unlimited thing. And we're going to be running the business remotely, getting ready for 2024. And today, why is today so special? Well, because I'm here with Leigh and we're doing a podcast and we're about to do some planning for the first kind of quarter of 2024. But intertwined within that is the last month of 2023. And I think that's also important to think about too, because, you know, it's easy to kind of push everything off to like, I'll start on the 1st of January. Like, if you're starting from a place of, and if we're starting from a place of being off and maybe being tired, it depends how you spend this time. As Leigh was calling it a minute ago, what's the words for the upcoming period?
Silly season.
Silly season.
The silly thing about silly season.
So depending on how you spend your time in silly season will determine how well you're actually going to plan at the start of 2024. Sometimes we can look out of like rose tinted glasses on the 1st of January and have great intentions, but are they pure? And are they coming from a place of groundedness? So it's really nice to kind of plan in the times before the storm, like the calm before the storm is a great time to do this. And it would have been last weekend where we did the power of planning. Now, whoever's listening to this, the power of planning recording is available. Hit the link in our bio and rewatch the recording. But yeah, it's a really good time now to, if you don't want to plan so super far in ahead, plan for silly season at least. What are your thoughts on that, Leigh? Silly season.
Well, the name's silly to start with, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what we were saying. The silly thing about silly season is the name.
Christ's Mass.
Because it's only as silly as you want it to be, really. It's all perspective. And we had a little chat about this off camera, but what's really behind silly season? You know, I know everybody's going crazy and wanting to spend their money and get their hair done, but I think a lot of us in the professional realm, we kind of bend the knee to that. And why do we bend the knee to people's franticness? I think there's probably only 2 reasons why. One might be because our inner people pleaser comes out to play. And there's this big influx of people and we think, how could I possibly say no? I'm of service. And then the other part is silly season underpinned by profit. Now, neither of those two are good, bad, right or wrong, but I think it pays to be honest. for a couple of reasons. We don't lose ourselves in silly season. If we're honest that it's about profit, fantastic, because you won't lose yourself then and pretend it like it's something that it's not. But also, if we're honest that it's for profit, we can gear it up as such a good business tool that way. We can maximize the profits from so-called silly season. And I think that's why I say it's only as silly as you want it to be, because it's all perspective. And another point that we kind of spoke about off camera was, I got to a point in my career where silly season was no different to the rest of the year for me. All of my weeks in the year look like that. Now, that's something we can get to in a moment. But it's just perspective. And I think if you're choosing for it to be silly season, like consciously choosing for it to be silly season, fantastic. At least it's a conscious choice. But just to bend the knee to silly season because everybody else tells you it is, could be a bit of a dangerous game.
Mm.
So what do you think about it?
I said it in the last podcast on other big occasions, man. But I feel like what you're saying there is, I think businesses in general, like take barbering out of it, like businesses in general start to kind of build up to silly season from the moment the last silly season ends, which is Halloween. It's like, okay, Halloween is finished. Let's start putting the Christmas stuff out there. And it's all marketing. It's all just a marketing campaign. It's all just an attempt to make money in sales. Like, it's just what it is. It's the way the world works. It's the way the industrial model and the way of capitalism and the way the world works. So again, like you were saying, nothing good, bad, right, wrong. It's just what is. But I think, to think that we don't have control in what happens during that period of time is so disempowering. Like, the supply and demand shouldn't change just because of time of year. In my opinion, it's actually nearly an opportunity to stick true to your boundaries and have people give you more respect. But there's a fear around losing clients if we can't facilitate everybody. Like, what's with everybody wanting a haircut just before Christmas? Like, what's that about? What, so they can look good for their family when they're sitting around having a Christmas dinner? Like, it doesn't, like,
for the people that supposedly love them the most.
I know they are. It doesn't, like, get a haircut the week out, the week before, a couple of weeks before, whatever. Like, it's not a big deal. But what we need to remember, in particularly as hairstylists during this period of time, is in any given moment we're conditioning our clients. We're conditioning them to behave in a certain way, and we need to remember our preferences within this as well. And like, nothing, in my opinion, should really change just because it's Christmas. Like, I've done it, guys. I've done it. I've bent over backwards for people, stayed open late, used it as a means to make more money, and underlying and underpinning, that's what it was. It's just like, let's drive the revenue up and let's, stack some cash during this busy period of time, and then make up for the times where there might be a little bit of a dip or a lull. But I don't know. I don't feel like, I don't live my life based on the calendar year that everyone else goes off of.
Yeah, I think if it's like you were speaking to there, if it's conscious, nothing wrong with that. But I feel like it's not a conscious choice. I think a lot of people think, oh, silly season, that means we all just go bonkers and then have to take January off because they're so exhausted and dysregulated. Which again,
must come down.
Yeah, the Christmas come down. But without awareness, that's probably always going to happen. And again, none of this is right, wrong, good or bad. I think we're just speaking from experience and what we've seen. And like I spoke to earlier, like, I managed to get my career to a point where all of my weeks were like Christmas week, and what do I mean by that? And well, I didn't make my weeks look like silly season weeks. I had X amount of appointments and they were all fully booked. That's it. And I did that all throughout the year. And, you know, I've been doing hair for a long time. And so people would say to me, oh, yeah, silly season. I'm like, no, my week always looks like this. So I think that's where my perspective comes from, is like, you can get it to a point where all of your weeks are fully booked, because a silly season to some people is being fully booked. They might not experience that throughout the year, being like truly fully booked, not a minute to spare in your day outside of lunch breaks and that kind of thing. So to them, it will look like it was a bit crazy. But for me, you know, that went on for years, all throughout the year. So Christmas week or Christmas month was no different for me at a certain point. Now, where I got to was, and again, this is where my perspective comes from, and maybe this just takes time in people's career. Once you realize, right, okay, my weeks are going to be booked out regardless, because my quality of work is strong, the value I bring is strong, my personal brand is strong, my supply and demand is strong. Okay, I've got all of that. Once you get to that point, then you can start to pick and choose where you might do a bit more work as a stacking cash exercise. And the cool thing was, I got to choose where that was throughout the year. Sometimes I would do it at Christmas because I just knew there was an influx, but it was a conscious choice, and I would choose and I would do it on my terms. Okay, I've got 3 extra appointments available Thursday evening. Cool. I'll take them $300 extra. Fantastic. But I think that's the difference between everybody just unconsciously going, oh, it's silly season, I have to bend the knee, to then, as a savvy business person, consciously choosing it is very different, because then you can prepare quite well. You can prepare and be regulated. You can go into it thinking, okay, yep, I've chosen this for myself. I'm going to go in, stay regulated, do what I need to do, whether it's breath work, whether it's a meditation, whether it's an earlier bedtime, whatever it is. And you can prepare yourself, but it's on your terms. And that's, I think that's the big difference. I've got no problem with silly season as long as we understand what silly means. Because if we're unconsciously just going mental, then it's not always a great idea. And if that, because the counter argument for that is like, oh, well, that's where we make all our money. Okay, if that is the case, there's a bigger problem. Silly season isn't your problem. Yeah, your problem is your branding and marketing and scaling throughout the year. What's your strategy? What's your yearly strategy? Not just waiting for silly season.
Yeah, like why do we ramp it up in the same time that everybody else is ramping it up? You know, it's like something that one of our coaches, James Kemp, one of our mentors, guy that we buy into a lot and listen to his stuff a lot, he said when everybody zigs, it's probably a good idea to zag, you know?
Yep.
If everybody is using the same marketing campaigns and everyone's going after the Christmas bookings, probably a good idea to zag. Now, another question that I'd have for you, which is off the back of that, what are your thoughts on, if this is such a big period of demand and there's limited supply, should prices go up? Should there be a Christmas surcharge?
Interesting.
And especially for hours that are being opened outside of opening times, should the appointment costs double for those people? That's a good question. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it depends. If it's again, it's like who asks who. So if it was my choice, my conscious choice, I'm like, look, I am choosing to open for 3 extra hours, then I would probably keep my service price the same, because no one else is telling me to do it. I'm like, look, I'm using this as a stacking cash exercise. I'm just going to consciously choose to open 3 extra hours. Now, you could play with that model, but if it was me, I'd probably keep it the same, because what I'm essentially saying is, I've got this extra time. Would you like to come in to see me? When you flip the script, if there are so many people saying, Leigh, oh, please can you do my hair? Please can you do my hair? Please can you do my hair? Oh, you have to do my hair before Christmas. I need it. I'll be like, okay, it's double then. If you're going to pull me away from my joy, where I'm at in my regulated space, out of when I wasn't going to do that in the first place, and I can now bring a conscious choice to do that, I'd put the price up. Because there's got to be a bargain in that, I think. It's like, oh, well, yeah, I could do it if you want me to do it, though, because I wasn't originally going to do it. But if you do want me to do it, there's got to be some sort of payoff, and I am going to double my price for that. Does that sound good to you? If it's a yes, beautiful, let's get you booked in. If not, no problem. I wasn't going to do it anyway.
Yeah. I observe a lot of other industries more so than I observe the hair industry, because I don't think people in the hair industry are making their own decisions.
No.
I think it at some point, yes, but for the large majority, they base all of their marketing and their decision making when it comes to pricing and strategy on what everybody else is doing. So it's kind of like, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, in certain scenarios, it's kind of like the blind leading the blind. And nobody really knows why they're doing it. And that's why I like to look elsewhere and think, okay, what are the restaurant business doing? Or what are these industries doing? Because, you go to certain cafes in Melbourne on a Saturday or Sunday, you pay more for a coffee.
Yeah.
There's a surcharge that comes with it, and people don't bat an eyelid. But I think in our industry, the reason why people do bat an eyelid or get upset about it is because of the personal relationship built with their hairdresser. And it also comes from how we have grown our clientele from the beginning. Because in the beginning, we're flexible. In the beginning, we can allow for flexibility because we kind of need certain people for training or for growth. But it's up to us as we grow, I think, to continue to train them, to continue to condition them. And if it's not directly, please do it indirectly. Do it on your Instagram. Do it on your social media. Let people know that you're busy. Let people know what you value. Let people know who you fucking are. Because if you don't, they'll come up with their own conclusion of what you are, which is for most people a hairdressing vending machine.
Bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, kind of. Like, I think that it's not their fault. It's not people's fault, because I feel like that there's certain people over the years that I've cut their hair, and I've got messages on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, like, can you cut my hair? Because in their world, that's all I do. And minimal observational behaviors will tell them that when they see me once every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks, they see me in an environment where I'm cutting hair. So when I pop into their mind like a little notification when they need a haircut, I only exist in that format. It's like the person who I go to get my coffee from every single day, right? Like when I was living in Brighton, the person who I was going to get my coffee from every single day, I didn't see him in any other light other than making me coffee. Now I have a level of awareness to know that he has a life, and that I wouldn't ask him to make me a coffee on Christmas Day because I wanted my coffee. That's fucking ridiculous. It seems like a ridiculous statement, but that's how people can treat hair sometimes, because of the personal relationship that we've allowed. We, as the hairdressers, have allowed that rope. We've given them that rope, and sometimes we need to just pull it back a little bit and set some clearer boundaries. And the reason why that doesn't happen is because of communication style and how sometimes we've learned how to communicate as humans. Because, like you said in the last podcast, Leigh, people who can't communicate think everything is an argument, and that's where during these periods of time it can be really difficult to communicate. Say, for example, the higher fee, that would be quite easy to communicate on social media, and then it's nothing personal. You can communicate that on social media. If I was a barber right now and I was cutting hair and I was trying to get more clients around Christmas and I was trying to stack some cash around Christmas, get a little notepad out, guys, take this one down because this will work. If you want to open up an extra day, or you want to open up extra hours and get more clients in, get extra clients in, you can push that on your Christmas hours price list thing or whatever you do on your social media. put a post out, say, hey guys, due to high demand around Christmas, I'm opening these extra hours, but haircuts will have an X amount surcharge on them for appointments outside of hours. What you're doing is you're telling the majority of people, like you're telling everybody who follows you, I would presume most of your followers would be clients, if that's your goal. You're letting them know that this is what the standards are and the boundaries are, because to take your example, Leigh, right, like where somebody messages you and asks you to cut their hair, if in the message you say, yeah, I can do it, but it's going to be double, some people might take that personally. Whereas if you say it to like a group of people, or you just generally put it out there, it no longer becomes personal then. And then you don't have to deal with the confrontation. Now look, you shouldn't really have to deal with it anyway, because like it's just not your problem. Like other people's money story and all of that isn't really your problem. However, if you want to minimize any opportunities or chances of confrontation coming up, that's a really good way to do it.
Yeah, I like that. I think it depends how ahead of the curve you are in terms of your marketing strategy. Like, you know, for us, it's probably easier for us to think like that because we've been doing this for so many years. We've experienced so many silly seasons, and we've experienced so many people calling us and asking for this and asking for that. So debriefing X amount of seasons gone by, we can go, right, there's a high probability that a lot of people are going to call me on this week, so I'm going to put it out early. And I like that. It's proactive. Proactive. Right, I'm gonna use a bit of foresight and go, right, December, judging by years past, X amount of people reach out to me. So instead of having all of those single conversations and dealing with objections and conflict, I'm going to just put out a broad, I'm going to weave it into my marketing strategy for December, and I'm just going to put it out there early. And look, who even knows? You know, the cool thing about this is, and I think this is where a lot of people get stuck with what they put out on social media, is you don't have to do a single damn haircut after hours if you don't want to, but at least you put the message out there. It's up to you how many of those you open. You don't have to do them either. That's the other thing. Is like you could do 0 or you could do 50. It's entirely up to you. But I think in the exercise of your marketing strategy, it's like, yeah, you can soften the blow by putting it out there early. And I really like that. Really like that attempt.
It's a good. That's another thing to write down. That's a free bit of gold there, because even now at this early stage, putting it out there that you're not doing any after hours gets people to book the hours that you have.
And what I used to do in the salon, I used to do the same thing, and that's why I've got lived experience of what happens when you put boundaries in place in silly season, is you end up filling January real quick. Everybody would have slow Januaries, I'd be fully booked. And that's not coming from a preloading the calendar. Yeah, just preloading. Okay, January's booked. Oh, guess what? We get a load of big supply and demand issue in January. Guess what? February and half of March gets booked, and then I was getting to a point where I'd be 3+ months booked out because I was sorting out that supply and demand issue early, getting a lot of people on reoccurring bookings, really taking care of those people. And then it was just, in a salon environment, it's mental how far booked out you can be. It's mad. Like 6 months is not uncommon, which is wild. Now, a lot of people see that as great. It was quite stressful in the end because you don't have a you don't have a single millimeter to mess up or take some time off, or maybe if you get sick one day or whatever, even if you're just tired, you don't really have much wiggle room. So I like to manage my time a lot different these days, but it's mad. It's really mad what you can do in terms of strategy if you have certain goals and targets. Now, talking to that's a beautiful segue to, I know what it feels like in silly season. I did about 10 years worth of silly seasons until I woke up and realized I don't like doing this. And the reason I speak to the kind of strategies and the things that we're talking to is, again, not because it's right, wrong, good or bad. It's like, if you feel overwhelmed in silly season, hear it now. You do not have to do it. You can just do your regular hours, and that's okay. Because what I've realized and what I've learned is, through lived experience, if you get your quality of work good enough, your branding and your supply and demand good enough, you can have Christmas week every week of the year. And I didn't like the way I felt after Christmas. You know, I'd find myself drinking away my sorrows on Christmas Eve and being like, oh, I've had enough, like what I've wrecked after December, seeing it as almost like a badge of honor, and then dreading going back in January because I've got all of the PTSD of what December was like, and then getting back in January and it's dead quiet, and then thinking, what am I doing with my life? You know, the whole thing just didn't look great. And for people listening, you might be laughing, but this is a common story in the hair world. It's a very common story, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate. So, you know, through personal experience, that didn't feel that good. And then what I learned after that is the next 8 years look very different to that. It didn't feel like that because I turned the book around and managed to book every week to look like Christmas week. Which, when you really look at it, full-time hours, to be booked out in full-time hours, is not. It's not an impossible thing to do every week of the year. It's not an impossible thing to do.
Not in a place like this. Like, not anywhere. Like, because I sometimes just, I have to catch myself when I say that sometimes, because we're in a city right now where there's 8 million people. I couldn't cut everyone's hair if I tried all year. Couldn't. Especially if I turned that marketing tap on. But I also did the same thing in a town of 6,500 people, 7,000 people.
Yep.
In Ireland. So like, it's not an impossible task whatsoever. It's all about who is doing the best marketing.
And so that's why I love this conversation. Something I always leave out of that conversation is my salon work was done in a small town like you're talking about. 10,000 people, 15,000 people on a good day when it was summer and all the travelers were passing through. Like, for the majority of the year, I was working off of a crowd of around 11,000 people. Now, you know, shrink that down to the percentage of people that I actually was reaching. Small amount of people, but what was happening? My branding was really good. You know, good people say, oh, well, you know, it's all right, you're in Melbourne doing this. No, that was done in a very small town. In a small town, I mean, this might hurt some people, but it's easier, in my opinion, because you only have to be 10% better than most of the people there to get the majority of clientele. I had clients that would drive an hour, 2 hours. So where I was living then was 2 hours outside of Melbourne. There were people that would drive 2 hours to Melbourne, spend X amount of hundreds of dollars on their hair, and then drive 2 hours home. So it was like a day trip. I was securing all of those people as my clients in that small town. Why? Was I as good as the people they were going to? Who knows? I don't know. I didn't know these hairdressers, but what I did know is I was always trying to be 10% better than the people around me, and that was good enough for them to say, fantastic, finally, somebody who's trying to bring some value. I don't have to travel anymore. Take my money. So there's always strategy. My mind goes mad when I think about these things because we've had lived experience in both places. You come from a small town. I spent 10 years of my time here in Australia in a small town building, you know, a three-month book column at any given time, charging the highest prices for a haircut in that area at that time. We've done a lot of it. We've done a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah.
So it can be done. It just takes time and it takes effort. Two of the things that a lot of people don't have these days.
And it also takes a level of belief.
Yeah.
In your product. Like, it takes a level of conviction, confidence, and belief in the product that you actually deliver, which is a haircut, because it's really easy to create supply and demand issues, which are not issues. It's easy to create these things when you're good at it. You're good at the thing, it's easy to sell it. It's like if you have the best products in the world, of course people are going to want to buy it. Like, it's not an issue, but that takes a level of self-belief to recognize that it is a good product. So, like, I knew in my hometown in Fermoy that I was the best at what I did. Might not have had all of the comprehensive skills that some other people did, but when you package the whole thing together, You know, it was what people wanted at that time. And and now I continue to just look at my life that way. But yeah, man, like we've had some conversations in the last couple of days, even with our clients in AMP and with some ex-colleagues about like certain things that are coming up for them, and like talking about strategy in barbershops. And it's like, fucking hell. Like if we decided to choose to go down that path right now, like we'd be cleaning up.
I'd love to see what people do. Yeah. There's so many options and there's so many gaps.
Gaps for fucking days. Gaps. It's just gaps everywhere. And like sometimes it's a really good thought experiment for anyone listening to this who runs their own business. What would happen tomorrow if your demand doubled or tripled or quadrupled? Because it's all well and good to like want that to happen, but do you have the system in place to be able to hold it? You know, it's like, for example, we're in the city right now, right? Like we're looking out at the buildings. You know, what if on top of like all of these buildings, what I've noticed between all of them when I look around, they all have this little square box on the top of them. And that square box goes all the way down the middle of the building through the ground and probably goes down just as deep into the ground, I would imagine, so that it has the stability to hold the building up. Now, tomorrow, if we doubled the size of one of these buildings without digging the foundations any deeper, would the building withstand the test of time? No, it would collapse. It would break. It would fall over because it wouldn't be able to hold the weight of it. So this is the one thing, right? We all want to blow up, and we want to blow up on Instagram. We want to blow up our business, blow this up. But you can literally blow it up. Yep. Because you can fuck yourself. Like, so sometimes it's not about marketing. When we say marketing, guys, there's other ways of getting your marketing message across as well. And that's tapping into the audience that you already have. Like, you don't like,
massive.
When you're in Colac doing that, like, I would imagine most of it was direct contact to clients.
Yep.
It was direct message to clients. Like, you don't have to go and put your brand out there to the world, but you can market directly to the audience, to the people that are actually spending money with you.
Yep.
And this is a huge fucking problem right now in barbering, because right now too many barbers they're too impressed with, they're too caught up in impressing other barbers and forgetting about the people who pay their bills. Like,
a lot of people do it the other way around. Like, what's that whole saying? It's like, think global, act local. So like, yeah, think about things on a global span, but then act local, because that's where your immediate environment is, and that's where the people who can spend their money with you, that's where they are. If you have a tangible physical service, you know, I can't cut someone's hair in America in a couple hours time because they're too far away. But I think a lot of people are flipping the script a little bit. They're thinking in their little bubble there, or they're local, but they're trying to act global, and that doesn't work in a tangible service outlet. It works from a brand perspective, and if you have the foresight to build towards something else which can utilize the global and online space, fantastic. Or if your work takes you globally, brilliant. But that's not most people. And we are living proof that, you know, there's so much to be done in the clients that you already have. You know, I remember when I used to put stuff out on, you know, Instagram and when it all first started, and I reckon 95% of my clientele weren't even on Instagram. You know, so I had to go direct to the source. And one of my best marketing pieces, this is why I think there's so much to be had in small town, is like word of mouth is crazy powerful in small town. Like I remember, you know, I was a hairdresser in a salon, and it would only take one woman who had some sort of significance in the town, and she'd tell 10 people, and they tell 10 people, and they tell 10 people. But I remember I struck gold because I cut this woman's hair who was like the president of the women's golf club. Brilliant. That's the one you want to get right. So what I struck a deal with her. I said, look, you've sent me a few people now. I'm happy to cut your hair for free and supply. I'd always compensate. I'd just give her some free products, whatever. I was like, yeah, if you could just kind of keep those conversations going, fantastic. If anybody asks, send them in my direction. And yeah, it worked beautifully. Word of mouth at small town is incredible.
It's targeting the people of influence in the small places.
Yeah.
Like for example, that's targeted. That's somebody of influence, and like who your perfect future client or target audience would look up to.
Yeah.
Right now, like one of the guys that used to work with us, and shout out to Benjamin Badry, he's doing that right now in Melbourne. He's cutting like probably one of the most prolific people of influence in Melbourne.
Yeah.
In Adrian Portelli. What is that going to do for Benji? It's going to only drive his value up in the eyes of his clients.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant.
It's funny.
That's in a big city, right? Like that's in a big city, but in a small town, it works really, really well.
Yeah. I'd love to know what those conversations go like. I'd love to ask Benji that, because we all know Adrian's got loads of money. So like the price point of Benji's haircut isn't going to be a problem for Adrian. No. Imagine some of the clients going to him, like I bet some of them think, I can't argue on the price because like he cuts Adrian's hair, like Adrian's not going to complain. And they're probably thinking, I wonder what he charges him. I wonder what he pays him.
Yeah, well, that's to get Benji on the pod one day.
Yeah.
We get him on. He can tell us himself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a really interesting conversation. I think a really good place to take this next actually would be, because it's kind of naturally going there anyway, is being fully booked a good thing? I actually don't think it is.
Only if you have a strategy.
Exactly. Without
being fully booked.
Without a strategy, it's no good. Because think about that, the whole analogy of the building doubling. There's an 80-20 rule at play when it comes to clients. And shout out to James Coulson for giving us this one. But 80% of your clients will generate 20% of your income. And 20% of your clients will generate 80% of your income. They are your ideal, perfect client that has no problem paying and is loyal and is, trusts you, only wants to come and see you for their hair. So they're going to generate 80% of your income because, the likelihood is they come and see you often. They're on recurring booking. So what happens in the morning if your business doubles or triples and you can't facilitate or see those people? You kind of cut your own power base off. Your real main source of income kind of gets damaged in a way. Now, if there's a strategy of always generating and bringing in new clients, that's different, but that's also exhausting. Really exhausting. Like you can still raise your prices with the clients that you have if you communicate it effectively. And that's one thing that I'm seeing now is like the constant generation cycle of, well, let's not get fully booked completely so that you can generate new clients at a higher price point. But for the skill level of the majority of people, like where does that end? And at a certain point, can you blow your business up because people might start looking at it and think, nah, that's just really not worth it. Like, because the product has to still be undeniable.
Yeah.
Like for example, if Apple doubled their prices overnight, people would have no choice but to buy it because it's the best product.
Yeah, they'd still buy it.
Because it's the best product.
Yep.
But if Microsoft did, you'd be like, nah, it's not really worth it.
Yep.
So there's an element of reality too, and being in touch with reality, being in touch with your own skill set. And yes, there's always a market for it, but like, are these the clients that you want to see? Sometimes like I would prefer to have, I actually got asked this question yesterday, right? Like, so funny, I just moved out of my house. I was selling stuff and guy came and bought a projector off us, and he was a barber and he was living in London for the last 8 years, and he just came back, and now he's working here from Melbourne. We just got into conversation. He knew who I was through Instagram, which is crazy, like, so funny. So like we were chatting away, and we just got into conversation, and he was just asking me about my working situation at the moment, and I told him that I don't do clients anymore. I basically don't cut hair anymore, only for educational purposes. And he was asking me like, oh, so like what was your price point at the end? Like, what did you get to in the end? And I was like, look, it kind of varied anywhere. It was mainly 150, but anywhere between like 150 and I was doing 450 for call outs, if I was doing call outs, which wasn't very often. And you know, I said to him there and then though, I was like, I actually didn't want it to be more than 150 though. Like, it wasn't a means of me making money. Like, in the end, it was more like just skills generation, and it kind of compensated like 45 minutes to an hour of my time. But I didn't feel like the delivery of the product was worth more than that in the end. Now look, the product itself, yeah, if I was really caring for it, and it was like I was putting full effort into it, and like I really wanted, for new clients, I've had a few new clients at that price point of 150. I felt like I had to do some sort of circus act for them. Like I was like the dancing monkey or something. Whereas with the clients that I had, it was just like they were just really happy to be paying me the 150, and they knew they were almost getting like a deal, because like I was coming to the end of my tether with it. Now I said to him, I was like, look, the trend nowadays is it's going up to like, you know, you see it across Instagram, pushing up to the 200 and plus mark for, you know, your regular hair appointment. We've spoken about this regularly, where it's like, I actually don't feel like, I wouldn't even buy my own product at a higher price point than like 200 maybe, just because like of where I'm at and the care that I would have put into it. There's people out there who are doing it for quarter of the price who will give you the same results and product. Now, if you're coming to speak to me and have a conversation and get an insight, and you enjoy it, and it's, you know, you're going to get the same thing every time, the consistency is there, great. Now look, I'm not saying that it wouldn't be worth it if I was putting my effort into it, but in the end, I didn't want to play that game. It was still low leverage. You know, like even at 200, even at 250, whatever, like it's still like, it's not, that's not like, I've kind of, my money story has changed to the point where that's not a lot of money at all, at all.
That's where I love where you went with that, because it just depends how you look at it, right? Like, you know, what's the value of anything these days? What's the value of a haircut? Good, bad, indifferent? Like, who even knows? Like, who even knows what is a high value haircut? What we're going off effort now. You just put in more effort, so it costs more money. I don't know, but I think the way that we look at it is time. Like, you know, I'm essentially selling a block of my time. That's how I look at hair now. I'm selling a block of my time. I don't go off of what's the value of the haircut. I'm like, look, this is a block of my time. If you want a block of my time, this is how much it costs. It's like someone who does like a tattoo. You know, it's not like, oh, here's my price for this, here's my price for this, small one, big one, whatever. It's like, look, it's going to be like just 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is. And this is what I charge per hour. Like, this is just an hour of my time. And it's all encompassed. And that's how I look at it. You know, that's what I mean in, you know, in previous like podcasts and pieces of content. You know, whether you get a buzz cut from me or whether you get an intricate whatever you get from me, it's all the same price, because you're buying a piece of my time. Now, I put the same effort into everything. And yeah, that's just where I'm at with what I do. And I think that's where our mindset changed over time. No longer were we basing it on what was the value of the thing. It's like, I'm just selling my time now, because there are other things I could be doing to make money right now, which make me a lot more than just cutting your hair right now. So let's forget that I'm doing you a favor or you're paying me or anything like that. You're just buying a chunk of my time, which I could also be doing something else with. And like you said, that's got to be compensated in some way. And that's just where it's at. So Look, I think humans in general, a lot of people who care about hair or clothes or just things in general, they enjoy quality. And what I would go as far as quality, because again, that's debatable. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. But, quality craftsmanship, I'd go as far as saying, there is a level of craftsmanship. And I'd pay for great craftsmanship because I see there's a bunch of, values and standards behind that of the person. And I'm imagining I quite enjoy a person like that. But other than that, who even knows what's worth anything? And I think that's going to be the what's going to unpin this whole race to get the highest price point is in a minute. And I say this all the time in A&P. I'm like, just be careful of the game that you're going to play, because we can all copy these, content strategies and social media strategies in terms of doing the exact same content and getting the exact same result. But it's going to come down to, I think, just by assessing human behavior, who is actually good at the thing. Because, look, you can get average Joe just doing average haircut. I'm charging 200, but what happens when everyone's charging 200? Everyone's going to stand back and go, but you know what? I'm just going to go to the good one. Because why would I pay you 100? Because again, we've got to understand consumer behavior. And this is where we speak to these things, I haven't seen anybody price themselves out of the market yet, because I see everything from $20 to $2,500. I don't know, but I think you've got to be doing something crazy to price yourself out of your market. And it depends. I've read different books and things, and talking about just being in that kind of one of one. Sometimes there is just a one of one. And right now in the barbering world, we're just having another kind of revolution of, there is one of ones at the moment. There are certain people who do certain things charging a really good rate, like a really high ticket rate. But once everybody gets there, no longer you're a one of one, you're not the unicorn anymore. And then everybody just doing what you do. So what does it go back to? What's the level? What's the gauge? Okay, I think it's just going to go back to quality craftsmanship again. And I see that as a big cycle. It's only going to go up from here. Haircuts are never going to go down now. It's only going to go up. But I think what's the great leveling kind of cycle? We get these interesting crazes, and then it all levels out again. And then there's a unicorn's going to have to pop their head out again with whatever that may be. And I think just by assessing human behavior, it's generally we swing towards quality craftsmanship. And you see that in everything. You see that in cars, you see that in clothes, you see it in hair, you see it in everything.
Yeah. And I just want to add to that piece as well, when I was explaining it to that barber who I gave the projector to, when I was explaining that to him, I had to kind of make it clear that that wasn't the way I made money. And that's why I didn't want to push it past that point, because I was actually pushing it out of my life.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you couldn't pay me enough to want to do it. I put my prices to $1,000. For new clients on my Instagram link, and I got no inquiries about it, and that's exactly the result that I wanted. I didn't want new clients, but so that's the thing. It's I had to say that to him as well in that conversation. He was like, "Oh, so what did you get to in the end?" And it's no, that wasn't the race that I was running. That's not how I was making money. It got to a point where it got to 150, and I was happy for it to end there, and I wasn't taking any new clients. I was doing 2 or 3 people a week, and at the end it was just this is actually costing me more than it's making me, because this isn't how I make money. And that's when the identity shift had to happen, had to put it to the side. And I didn't want to enter into that race because it wasn't something that I actually wanted to do. And I think that's one of the main things that is kind of hard to, even for me to get across or understand myself. That's why it's great to have a podcast like this where we can talk about it, because if that was my sole income stream and my sole source of making money, then my thoughts on this might be actually different. My thoughts on this might be actually, no, I'll keep scaling the price up to 300 if I need to, or 400, 450, whatever it was, because there's a clientele that will pay it. But for me, I need to be in my purpose to feel good about that as well. Like, I've got no problem. Like, right now, speaking of 150, like, you know, we charge far more than that for what we do now in our services. And I have absolutely no problem in charging that, because of I know the value that comes with it, because of the effort that I'm putting in, and because of the result that it's getting for that person.
Yeah.
And like, if I felt the same way about my haircuts, and they were something that I really wanted to do and keep improving and keep pushing my craft, then I would apply that same thing to the haircuts. But like, yeah, just the context shifted and changed. And it's just not something that I wanted to do, because like, we've said this plenty of times, but like, if we wanted to fully book ourselves at, you know, say for example, if I wanted to fully book myself with 50 clients a week at $150, it's $5,500. You know, like, it's nice money. It's nice money. And I could do it, but I wouldn't want to do it. Because where does it end? Like, this is the thing too. It's like, I wouldn't be able to see, it wouldn't fulfill and the goals that I have for my life and how I want to actually live. And once I stepped back and saw that and got a little bit of advice on it and got coached, I was just like, nah, this isn't actually where I want to spend my time. And I look at the people in the industry that I look up to the most, some of the guys in the UK and whatnot, and I don't particularly like how they live. I used to look up to them all for a long time, and now I see them standing behind the barber chair serving clients, and next minute they're traveling around the world doing all these shows, and I'm like, you're fucking sleeping on a huge opportunity to make such greater impact, and with that greater impact will come greater income, and then you'll be able to actually, you know, spend time with your family. I don't know, it doesn't add up for my values.
I love that, where that kind of segued is like thinking about how it feels and what life looks like from there. Because I think we sometimes we can get caught up in these metrics, like to a lot of young barbers or even hairstylists, the goal is to get booked out. And a lot of people, and we had this chat again with this barber that we were talking to, you know, for a lot of people, that's just the goal. That's it. The goal is to get booked out, but that's just one metric. And that metric has a lot to do with you. That's your own pride in, I got booked out and that's the goal. Fantastic. But how does that feel? You do that for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. You know, I know some hairdressers that have been cutting hair more than 40 years, you know, and they come from a generation where, you know, that was all you did was do the one thing. So that's fine. But moving forward, I don't know if I even know a hairdresser that's going to be doing it for 40 years. You know, the average lifespan of a hairdresser right now is 8 years. Average career span is 8 years. Do we have any of those 40-year veterans? I'm not sure. And I don't blame them if they don't get there.
I've very rarely met someone who's been doing it for longer than 10 years.
Yeah.
When I really think about it, like, I've very rarely met somebody who's been doing it for longer than 10 years and just standing there behind the chair and doing serving clients. Yeah, that context.
And that's why a
lot of people end up working with like product brands or whatnot. They go into a different role within the same space.
Yeah.
But like actually doing and serving clients longer than that time.
Yeah.
And it tends to be the case that the ones who are really fucking good at what they do.
Yeah.
Or still being undercompensated for it, by the way, because of their talent. You know, some of the best fucking hairdressers in Australia, I can't imagine they're making a lot of money. It's actually kind of sad when I really think about it.
And that's why I have the perspective that I do. You know, I'm coming up 20 years cutting hair, and it's like, guys, you know, I think that's the bit of the disconnect here, is like the barber world is so young. You know, I'm the same as you. I don't know many people that have been doing it for more than 10 years. You know, like all these young guys say, oh, I can't understand. Oh, don't you love it? Oh, I love it. It's like, yeah, guys, come back to me in 10 years. Tell me how much you love it. It's not because of the thing. It's because of the capacity in which you've been doing it. And that's why we speak to these things. And that's why it's a good idea to listen to us, because we've got the experience. We've seen where the model goes, and it doesn't last long for most people, especially with all the options that we have today. So where I was going before with like where I loved where your conversation was going was about the way in which people make money. Now, for most of these barbers who just want to chase their price up and up and up and up and up, it is the only way they make money. Now, if we get back to something we've spoken about before, and this is how we help people in A&P think like an investor. So that money you collect from cutting hair, how much is it and where does it fit in your wealth strategy? That's the trick. That's the difference in thinking, okay, so, because after a while, it doesn't become a competition or a chase to get X amount, or look at me, I'm charging this, blah, blah, blah. It's like, how much money do I collect from this? Is that the best way I can collect money? Because once we start thinking this way, a lot of people realize, oh, cutting hair isn't the most efficient way I can collect money. And then what do I do with that money and where does it fit into my wealth strategy? That's a big thing that a lot of barbers aren't thinking about and also aren't taught. Because their only way to make money is to cut hair. And that's why we have a culture of more, faster. Why? Because that's the only way a lot of people know how to do it. Well, wealth strategy, I mean, man, there's so many ways to do it. Like we've spoken about it so much lately. You know, if you spend a good 10 years just in wealth strategy mode, setting yourself up, setting the foundation, try not to impress others. You know, the real superpower is not worrying about impressing others. Wow, can you be in a really good position and well ahead in life? And these things that become issues, like silly season, like getting burnt out, these aren't issues once you get into your 30s and then into your 40s. They won't be issues. Why? Because you had a great wealth strategy. So I think there's lots of holes in, again, gaps. We just look for the gaps, and there's gaps everywhere. And that's why we always say, man, imagine if we had a shop, or, you know, we had a team that we worked with. They'd be the most empowered hairstylists in the world, I'd say. We'd have wealth strategies for them. We'd have growth strategies for them. We'd show them the best of the best. Like, we have access to the best hairdressers in the world. Like, their knowledge base would be crazy. They'd be fantastic humans. Like, that's empowering to me. That's why I always say the hair world is this close from being amazing, because look at the opportunity it has. And that goes for most industries. Most industries are this far away from being incredible. We just can't step aside for a second and just look at it. A lot of people can't do that because, you know, what did Ram Dass always say? Use your work as your path to enlightenment. I think industries could be that. Industry, look at your industry and use it as your path to enlightenment. How can we empower people? How can we enlighten people? What a world we'd be in. But strategy moving into silly season, I'd definitely be having to think about it. I'd definitely be thinking about, well, what do I want my December to look like? Really think into just take a moment to get into your heart and think about how it feels. You enjoy being burnt at the end of December? If you do, and it's a badge of honor, fantastic. But if you don't like it, it's no judgment on you. It doesn't mean you're better or worse, or you're not a hard worker. You know, if you're doing your full-time hours, you've clearly got work ethic. You're adhering to the contract and what's expected of you. Fantastic. But really think about that. Is this what I want to do with my December? And is there a better strategy for me? And if you're employed or someone wants more of you, definitely negotiate. Try and negotiate. I would definitely say that.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, the theme here is supply and demand and being fully booked and all of that kind of jazz. Sometimes you gotta just ask yourselves, or, you know, questions that I've asked myself over the years is like, is this it? Like, is this, what then? Like, what happens then?
Well,
like,
the question always is, what then? You know, it's always that.
You know, when I was in Shramoy, when I was first starting out in the industry, I got about a year in, less than a year in. It would have been 9 months into cutting hair. I had that realization. It's like, is this it now? Like, I'm at capacity. I was doing 70, 80 haircuts a week. It's like, is it? Like, how is it going to slow down from here if I'm going to facilitate all these people unless I create, like, you know, a higher price point? And then I can just see my future playing out, and I was like, this doesn't look great. This doesn't look like how. There's definitely more potential here, and that's what I mean by like, you know, some of the best hairdressers and some of the best barbers in the world are actually in Australia, and I'm nobody to know how much money that they're making, you know, but revenue and what they turn over is a different thing to the money that they're pocketing and taking home. Versus, you know, like they could be making millions of dollars a year in their business, but it still could be small in relation to what they could potentially be making in a different vehicle if they were doing it in a different way.
I had that awakening as well when, like you were saying, you could see how the future was playing out even 9 months in. You know, when I was doing those, I had quite a big demand issue. So my supply, obviously, I'm just one person as supply, but I would get lots of new clients coming to me again because the word of mouth thing was so strong, and I was providing a high quality of work. But the salon that I was at had never really experienced that before, so there was no process around how to handle a supply and demand issue. And what I found was I was saying yes to all these new people, but it was pushing out the people that got me there in the first place. And in that scenario, I didn't have an issue with people wanting to come on the price journey with me because they knew they were getting crazy value anyway. And I was like the unicorn in that town. So they were like, cool, I'm willing to pay, but now I can't get in with you. What's going on? And so my realization there was that can't last forever as well. Because in a minute, those people are going to get sick of trying to get in with me, so they're gone. And there isn't an endless supply of new people coming to you. There just isn't. I don't care what anybody says. Like you said, there's 8 million people in Melbourne. You can't cut all of their hair. There isn't an endless supply of new people. Now, play that game well. It might seem like there's an endless supply, but there isn't. So back to your point of like, you know, I could see how that was playing out. All the people that got me there to the first place, who most of who I actually quite enjoyed being around, were just not there, couldn't get in. And some of them were just going elsewhere because they couldn't get in with me. And then I was having to appease the opinion of all these other new people, which, to your point, was exhausting. That's an exhausting game.
One of the things as well to watch out for during this period of time is like how you bend and move and flex to people's demands and needs, somewhat need more so their wants, because you're training them how to see you for the rest of the year. You know, when you bend and you move and you make these changes in your schedule for people, they'll treat you that way the rest of the year. At all times, you're training people how to treat you as a stylist. And like, it's really important to be firm on boundaries. It's a great time of year to get rid of people that you don't want as well. Yeah, it's a nice time of year to shed clients. But it's just super important, like, as to like how far backwards you bend over for people in this period of time, because they're going to treat you the same for the rest of the year, essentially, because now you've shown them that it is possible for you to make more time for them. And the ones who are likely to ask for it will ask for it again, because they don't know what boundaries look like.
Yeah.
And anyone who gets upset with you setting a boundary, it's just because you're mirroring to them where they have a lack of boundaries in their life or their lives. So don't be afraid to set a boundary. You don't have to do anything. You know, like, I don't know if we spoke about this already in the podcast as well, about the whole inclusivity thing. It's probably worth a whole podcast in itself. But like, you don't have to do anyone's hair, any type of hair, nothing. Yeah, we did speak about it last podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, you know, you don't have, like, it's not your responsibility to organize people's calendars. If they're not organized, their problem.
Yeah.
And like, that's, you know, in the nicest way possible. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Flex, bend, do whatever you want. It's your life. But like, you just can't complain about it then later down the track.
And please do it consciously. Now that you've had this conversation.
Domino effect though. Somebody asking you and breaching your boundaries today, it didn't happen today. It happened when you showed them that it can happen.
Yeah.
People don't come to these conclusions themselves. Like, you know, I know of people that I don't know personally, and I know how to treat them based on how they've taught me how to treat them.
Yeah.
You know, look at like lawyers or, you know, in society standards, well-respected jobs.
Yeah.
You don't treat them a certain way, or you don't speak to them a certain way. There's a level of respect that is demanded.
Yeah.
And like, you know, this is a really good time to demand that respect, and from a place of logic too. It's not like you have to be a dickhead. That's most hairdressers' problem, is they're too big of people pleasers, and they think they're going to be seen as a dickhead, and they just want everyone to love them, so they don't love themselves.
Yeah. I think this is a great conversation for any young barbers and hairdressers out there as well. Like, you know, Christmas month, or it can be a good time to double down on capturing some new clients and, you know, making some more business for yourself, and that's a great thing. But really take on board what we're saying here. If there's any youngsters out there, there's the great thing, especially if you work in a shop, there's overflow from the other stylists or for people that are booked, new clients. Fantastic, you're going to get the overflow, brilliant. But that is even more of a good time to set your boundaries and be yourself and do exactly the work and the things that you want to do, and set that preface early, because if they do end up becoming your client, you're training them from the get-go. And you're never too young or too early in your process to start doing that, because it's essentially setting your life, your dream life and dream career up and dream clients. And I always talk about this, you know, in our 3-day course, like a career of longevity. You know, I would much prefer a career that I love. And what I know now in this modern day is that can happen. You can curate a career that you love. Because trust me, I meet loads of hairdressers and not a lot of them love their career, because they'll mask like they do, but then in the next breath complain about their clients and complain about this and complain about that. Oh, but I love it. Or what you love is the craft and getting lost in the art and maybe even the distraction. But, you know, to truly enjoy it, to truly love it, that's a different thing. And I think you can definitely curate that. And a lot of it comes down to your environment, who you spend your time with, and how you spend your time. And for all the youngsters listening in, if you can do that early, and this is your permission slip to do it early, don't let anybody else tell you different. Start that process. Start curating early. And you don't have to be a dickhead about it. It doesn't have to be obnoxious or righteous. It's just standing firm in your beliefs, your values, your standards, and curate that career that you're going to love if you want longevity. Sure. Perfect. Wonderful.
I think that's enough for the...
Well, that was a lovely chat.
It's enough for the listeners today. And next time you see me, I'll be sipping a coconut in Bali. You know, and that's not social proof in itself. If you know you do this well enough from the beginning, you could probably do this in half the time that I've done it, if you just ask me how. It's as simple as that. How did you do that? It is literally as simple as that, you know. Well, sometimes people won't ask how because they're this is a James Kemp piece that I listened to yesterday. Sometimes people won't ask how somebody's done something because they assume, because of the position or authority that they have, that they should know. Silly. Waste of time.
But there's never been a truer statement. Success leaves clues.
Yep. And who's going to pick them up? Who's going to pick the clues up?
They're everywhere.
And associate with them. Because this is the thing, you know. I think one thing we always say is, like, this is also possible. Like, everything we speak about and all of our experience, like, we're not any unicorns. You know, I was on a podcast with Eugene last week. Probably a good one for you guys to listen to too, the listeners of this, because lots of gems in there. And one of the things that we spoke about was knowing that this is possible for you as well. a lot of the time when people go on a podcast or have a podcast, it's because they have a level of success, or quite often the societal norm is to look at somebody with a level of success and think that they just have this like freakish talent, or they just had like a run of events or circumstances that makes it like a lucky thing. But there's nothing like that with us. We're two regular guys from small places in Ireland and the UK, like, who just recognised early that there's a formula to this, and a lot of it comes in the form of asking for help and getting the right people around you, and cutting the check for time, like, the whole Tony Robbins piece. Sometimes you just gotta put something out in order to receive something back, and we can go our whole lives wondering and waiting and expecting. And I think right now we're living in a world of expectation where it's just like, one day I'll have the Lambo. It's like, no, that ain't gonna happen. On the way to getting it, you probably realise you won't want it anyway, but depending on the circles that you hang out in. But a lot of the successful people that I deem successful that I've met over the years, they haven't done it by themselves. Like, they didn't just get some stroke of genius from fucking God in their sleep or in a dream. They went and they've asked for help. They've asked how. It's a simple question. Wow, how did you do that? For example, like when I give you a really tangible barbering type of example, and this is the problem that we spoke into last podcast about putting the icing on the empty plate. Somebody who is at a deemed level of success in hair is afraid to ask how or questions because their egoic version and view of themselves won't allow it, because it's like, I've already made it, I'm already there, so I'm not going to bother asking how. And that is dangerous behaviour, because it's going to show up everywhere. It's not going to just be in your hair skill set, it's going to be everywhere. It's going to show up all over the place in your life, and it's just not a great way to actually live, because when you cut the check for time, life becomes a lot easier, and it just takes, it's one of the traits of running a successful business. Gary Vee speaks about it in 12 and a half. One of the emotional ingredients for success is humility. And it takes humility to ask how. The only question is, the silly question is the question that's not asked. And I've had to swallow some of those bitter pills myself over the years. I thought I was a great hairdresser until I came to work at Area. And then I was there, and because I was working at Area, I went for a long period without asking any of the boys how, because I was just trying to skip that part to be part of the crew. And it wasn't until one day Danny pulled me aside and he was like, why aren't you watching anyone and asking questions? And I was like, I wasn't aware enough at the time to tell the truth, but it hit me. I was like, yeah, no, you're right. Like, I can't skip this part, just because I was the big fish in a small pond back in Fermoy. I wanted to be like, I wanted to fit in, but I didn't want to ask how. Because I thought, now that I'm here and I'm playing for this team, I should just know, instead of getting curious and asking the questions that I needed to ask.
I was really fortunate in my apprenticeship. In between, like, if there was any spare time in between, like cleaning and washing hair and stuff like that, my boss said, and when you've got nothing to do, you stand and watch and pay full attention. So that was kind of programmed to me early. It was like, just seemed normal. I've got nothing to do, cool, I'm gonna lock in and watch.
Yeah, one of the troubles for me was I won an award right before I came here. Speaking about putting the icing on an empty plate, like, I won an award of Irish Apprentice of the Year. So that to me was like, my apprenticeship's over. You know, so I don't have, like, I got caught in that mindset, you know. Might seem fucking bizarre now, listening to us on this podcast speak about that kind of stuff so much. But it happens. I was trying to put the icing on an empty plate, and then I realised, oh shit, can't really do that.
Haven't built the cake yet.
No, back to the drawing board. And, you know, ultimately I'm glad for all the experiences. But too many people wait too long in business, especially for that. So anyway, off to Bali tomorrow. Slightly, I don't know how I feel about it all. I'm kind of a bit like, I had an energy healing yesterday, which was really interesting, like a pranic healing, and it certainly calmed me down. It helped me feel like a little bit more connected. I'll tell you a bit more about that off air, because I'm still trying to figure out some of it. But
I remember where you are.
Yeah. What's the name of the podcast again? Huh? Who am I?
What are we doing?
Anyway, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.
Leave us a comment below. What did you think of the episode? What was your one key takeaway? If you don't leave a comment for us below, send it to us in private, or don't say anything to us and just write it down yourself, because as we spoke about in the last podcast, it's not about the plan, it's not about the thing that you do, it's not necessarily about listening to the podcast, it's about how you're going to take the information and implement it. So see you next week on Unlimited to speak into more things that are going to help you become unlimited.
See you then.